The doctor said Ophelia Newfield would never walk properly again. And in a town like Dalhart, Texas, in 1878, that might as well have been a death sentence for any hope of marriage. Ophelia sat on the wooden bench outside the general store, her walking stick propped beside her, as she watched the townspeople pass by with barely concealed pity in their eyes. At 22 years old, she had long since accepted that no man would want a wife who limped, whose left leg had been twisted since a childhood accident involving a spooked horse. Her father had died 2 years prior, leaving her the small house on the edge of town and enough money to survive if she was careful. Her mother had passed when she was just a girl. She was alone in every way that mattered. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the dirt streets of Dalhart, and Ophelia adjusted her bonnet to shield her face. She had come to town for supplies, though the walk back home would be painful as always. The distance was only half a mile, but it might as well have been 10 with her condition. "Miss Newfield, you should not be out in this heat," Mrs. Patterson said, stopping with her basket of vegetables. The older woman's face held genuine concern mixed with that familiar pity. "Can I help you home?" "I am fine, Mrs. Patterson. I have managed this long on my own." "It is just that. Well, a woman alone like yourself should not strain herself so much. Perhaps if you considered moving in with the Hendersons, they have that spare room and could use help with sewing." Ophelia forced a smile. "I appreciate your concern, but I prefer my independence." Mrs. Patterson pursed her lips and nodded before moving along. Ophelia knew what everyone thought. Poor crippled Ophelia, too proud for her own good, destined to die alone in that little house. The town had tried to arrange matches for her when she was younger, but the suitors always found excuses once they saw her limp. Some were kind about it, others less so. She gathered her small bundle of supplies and reached for her walking stick, preparing herself for the journey home. The stick was worn smooth from years of use, carved by her father before he died. It was one of her most precious possessions. As she stood, a commotion at the far end of town caught her attention. A man on horseback was riding in, leading a pack mule loaded with furs and supplies. Even from a distance, Ophelia could see he was enormous, easily over 6 feet tall with shoulders that seemed to span half the width of his horse. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, and a thick beard covered his jaw. He wore buckskin clothing that marked him as someone who spent more time in the wilderness than in civilization. The mountain man dismounted with fluid grace despite his size, his muscles evident even beneath his clothing. Several townspeople stopped to stare as he tied his horse to the hitching post outside the trading post. Ophelia found herself staring too, though she told herself it was merely curiosity about a stranger in their small town. She began her slow walk home, focusing on each step to minimize the pain. The sun seemed especially brutal today, and she could feel sweat trickling down her back beneath her dress. She had made it perhaps 200 yards when dizziness suddenly washed over her. The heat was too much. She had forgotten to drink enough water. The ground tilted beneath her feet, and her walking stick slipped from her grasp. She braced for impact with the hard, packed dirt, but instead, strong arms caught her before she could fall. "Easy there," a deep voice rumbled. Ophelia looked up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. The mountain man had somehow crossed the distance from town and caught her. Up close, he was even more imposing, all hard muscle and raw strength. His face was weathered from years in the sun, but his eyes held kindness. "I am fine," she stammered, trying to regain her footing. "Just a moment of dizziness." "You are not fine. You are overheated and exhausted." He did not release her, instead supporting her weight effortlessly. "Where were you heading?" My home is just up ahead, the small house with the blue door. Truly, I can manage." The mountain man looked at her walking stick on the ground, then at her leg, and understanding filled his eyes. But there was no pity there, only assessment. "You will not make it in this heat. Not today." Before she could protest, he bent and retrieved her stick with one hand while keeping the other arm supporting her. Then, to her absolute shock, he swept her up into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. "Sir, you cannot just carry me. People will talk. This is highly improper." "People can talk all they want. You are about to collapse." His voice held no room for argument. Now, which direction? Ophelia felt her face burning with embarrassment, but she was too dizzy to truly fight. She pointed toward her house, and the mountain man began walking with long, steady strides. His arms felt like iron beneath her, solid and secure. She could feel the warmth of his body through their clothes, and it made her heart race in a way she had never experienced before. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. "Logan Foster. I trap in the mountains up north, come down a few times a year to trade, Ophelia Newfield. And I appreciate your assistance, Mr. Foster, but this is truly unnecessary." "Seems pretty necessary to me. You would have hit the ground hard if I had not caught you." He was right, though she hated admitting it. They reached her house quickly, his long strides eating up the distance that would have taken her 20 painful minutes. He carried her right up to the door, and she fumbled with the key in her pocket. "Allow me," Logan said, somehow managing to support her with one arm while taking the key and unlocking the door. He pushed it open with his boot and carried her inside, looking around the small but tidy front room. Without asking, he carried her to the chair near the window and set her down gently. "You got water?" he asked. "In the kitchen, there is a pitcher on the table." He found it quickly and brought her a cup. Ophelia drank gratefully, feeling some of her equilibrium return. Logan stood watching her, his massive frame seeming to fill the small room. "Thank you, Mr. Foster. You have been very kind. Just Logan, and you should not be walking in that heat, especially not with your leg troubling you." "I do not have much choice. I need supplies and I live alone." Something flickered in his eyes. "No family, none that remain in Dalhart." He nodded slowly, then glanced around the house again. She saw him taking in details, the way a hunter or tracker might assess a situation. "That porch step is loose, could trip you up. I have learned to be careful with it. Careful only works until it does not." He moved toward the door. "I will be in town a few days. I will fix it before I leave." "Mr. Foster, Logan, you do not need to do that. You have already done more than enough." He paused at the threshold, looking back at her. "Maybe, but I am going to fix it anyway." Then he was gone, leaving Ophelia sitting in her chair, her heart still racing and her mind spinning with confusion. No man had ever just swept her up like that, had carried her without seeming to notice her damaged leg as anything but a practical concern. He had not looked at her with pity, only with a straightforward assessment of what needed to be done. She spent the rest of the evening thinking about him, those blue eyes and that deep voice. She told herself it was foolish, that he was just a kind stranger who would leave in a few days and never think of her again. Men like Logan Foster did not fall for crippled women who could barely walk to town and back. The next morning, she was woken by the sound of hammering. Ophelia quickly dressed and made her way to the front door, opening it to find Logan on her porch, tools spread around him as he replaced the loose board on her step. "Good morning," he said without looking up from his work. "Hope I did not wake you too early." "I am usually up with the dawn anyway." "Logan, you did not have to do this. Told you I would." He finished securing the new board and tested it with his weight. Satisfied, he moved to the next worn section. "Looks like a few other things need attention too." That window shutter is hanging crooked and your rain barrel has a leak. I cannot pay you for all this work." Now he did look up at her, and there was something almost amused in his expression. "Did I ask for payment?" "Well, no, but it does not seem right for you to do all this labor for nothing. Consider it repayment for your hospitality yesterday. You let a stranger into your home, gave him your trust. That is worth something." Ophelia did not quite know what to say to that. She watched him work for a few more minutes, admiring the easy competence with which he handled the tools and the repairs. His muscles flexed beneath his shirt as he worked, and she found herself unable to look away. "I could make breakfast," she offered finally, "if you are hungry." Logan straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "That would be appreciated." She prepared biscuits and bacon, along with eggs from her small henhouse out back. When she called him inside, he washed his hands in the basin and sat at her small table. The chair looked almost comically small beneath his large frame. "You keep a good home," he observed, looking around at the neat kitchen. "Everything in its place. When you live alone, you learn to be organized. Otherwise, things become chaotic quickly. You manage all this by yourself." "The chickens, the garden I saw out back. I do what I can. Some things are harder than others, but I have learned to adapt." He nodded, and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Ophelia found herself stealing glances at him, trying to reconcile this gentle giant with the rough mountain man stereotype she had always heard about. "How long have you been trapping?" she asked. "Near about 8 years now. Started when I was 18 after my pa died. Seemed like the life for me, up in the mountains with just nature for company." "Do you ever get lonely?" Logan considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but I have never been much for crowds and small talk. The mountains are honest, you know. They do not pretend to be something they are not." Unlike people, Ophelia thought. "I think I understand that. Figured you might." He looked at her directly. "Town like this, people probably have a lot of opinions about how you should live." She laughed, but there was little humor in it. "You could say that. Everyone knows everyone's business in Dalhart, and everyone has decided that poor, crippled Ophelia is destined for a lonely spinster life. They actually call you that, crippled? Not to my face, usually, but I have heard it. Such a shame about her leg, she would be almost pretty otherwise. Or what man would want to be saddled with a lame wife?" Logan's jaw tightened, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Those people are fools. Perhaps, but they are also realistic. A wife who cannot walk properly, who would struggle with children, who would be a burden rather than a help on a farm or homestead. It makes sense that no man would want that. You are not a burden." His voice was firm, brooking no argument. "You are managing this place alone, keeping yourself fed and housed. That takes strength, not weakness." Ophelia felt unexpected tears prick at her eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. "That is kind of you to say. It is not kindness. It is truth." He finished his breakfast and stood. "Now, I should get back to those repairs before the day gets too hot." He worked through the morning, fixing her shutter, patching the rain barrel, and even tightening the hinges on her chicken coop gate. Ophelia brought him water periodically and tried not to watch him too obviously. There was something mesmerizing about the way he moved, all controlled power and efficiency. By noon, he had finished everything that needed immediate attention. He packed up his tools and prepared to leave. "Thank you, Logan, for everything. You have done far more than I could have asked. Like I said, it needed doing." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "I will be in town until the end of the week. If you need anything else, anything at all, you can find me at the boarding house." "I will remember that." He nodded and started to leave, then turned back. "Ophelia, do not let what those people say define you. You are worth more than their narrow opinions." Then he was gone, striding back toward town with that same powerful gait. Ophelia stood on her newly repaired porch, watching until he disappeared from view and feeling something she had not felt in years: hope. Over the next few days, Logan found reasons to stop by. He brought her fresh meat from a deer he had taken, claiming he had too much for himself. He fixed a wobbly chair she had been meaning to get around to. He even helped her weed her garden, his large hands surprisingly gentle with the plants. Each visit, they talked more. Logan told her about the mountains, about tracking animals and reading weather signs. He described vast forests and crystal-clear streams, peaks that touched the sky and valleys where elk grazed in the morning mist. His words painted pictures that made Ophelia long to see these places herself, even knowing her leg would make such travels nearly impossible. In turn, she told him about her life, about her father who had been a carpenter and had taught her to appreciate good craftsmanship, about her mother who had died when Ophelia was 8, leaving her with vague memories of warmth and laughter, about the accident when she was 10, how the horse had reared and kicked her, how the doctor had said she was lucky to keep the leg at all, even if it would never work quite right. "You regret it?" Logan asked one afternoon as they sat on her porch, watching the sun begin its descent. "Staying here, I mean. You could have gone to a bigger city where people might be less concerned with such things." "I thought about it," Ophelia admitted, "but this is my home. My father is buried here. And I suppose I was afraid that running away would just prove everyone right, that I am weak and cannot handle things." "There is nothing weak about you, Ophelia." The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. "But staying somewhere you are not valued, that is a kind of prison." "And what would I do elsewhere? At least here I have my house, my small income from the sewing I do. Starting over somewhere new, completely alone, seems more frightening than staying." Logan was quiet for a long moment. "You would not have to be completely alone." Ophelia's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He turned to look at her fully, those blue eyes intense. "I mean that I have been thinking about you, about this town, about my life in the mountains, and I find myself not wanting to leave at the end of the week." "Logan, I do not understand." "I think you do." He reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I have met a lot of people in my travels, Ophelia. Most of them see what they want to see, hear what they want to hear. But you listen when I talk. You see me, not just what I am or what I do, and I see you. Not your leg, not your limp, but you. The woman who tends her garden even when it hurts, who keeps her home beautiful, who has more strength in her little finger than most people have in their whole body." "We have known each other less than a week," she whispered, even as her heart raced. "I know. And maybe that seems foolish, but I have spent 8 years alone in those mountains, and I never felt lonely until I met you and realized what I have been missing." "What are you saying?" Logan slid from his chair to kneel in front of her, still holding her hand. "I am saying that I do not want to go back to the mountains alone. I am saying that I think you deserve better than this town's pity and narrow-mindedness. I am saying that I am falling in love with you, Ophelia Newfield, and I would like the chance to see where that might lead." Tears spilled down Ophelia's cheeks. "You cannot mean this. You barely know me and I am crippled, Logan. I will slow you down, be a burden to you. Stop calling yourself that." His voice was fierce. "And let me decide what is or is not a burden to me. Yes, you have a damaged leg. So what? It does not change who you are. It does not make you less deserving of love or happiness. People will think you have lost your mind. I do not care what people think. But a life in the mountains, Logan, I could not keep up with you. I can barely walk to town without exhausting myself." He smiled then, and it transformed his whole face. "Then I will carry you whenever you need it. Over every threshold, up every hill, across every stream. Your leg does not scare me, Ophelia. The thought of leaving you here and never seeing you again, that scares me." She could hardly breathe. "This is insane." "Maybe, but the best things usually are." He squeezed her hand. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am asking if I can court you properly, if I can prove to you that I mean what I say. Let me stay in Dalhart a while longer. Let me show you that I am serious about this, about you." Ophelia looked into his eyes and saw only honesty and hope. No pity, no doubt, just genuine feeling. It terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, you may court me." Logan's smile widened and he brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "You will not regret this. I promise you that." As the sun set over Dalhart that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Ophelia felt something shift inside her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than the narrow path the town had laid out for her. The next morning, Logan arrived early with a surprise. He led her outside to where a small cart sat waiting, pulled by his sturdy mule. "What is this?" she asked. "Transportation. I figured if we are courting, I should take you on proper outings, and since walking long distances is difficult for you, I made this." He gestured to the cart, which had been fitted with a comfortable seat padded with blankets. "Not fancy, but it will get you around easier. You made this for me." "Well, I modified it. Bought the cart from the wheelwright and fixed it up special. Now you can go places without wearing yourself out." Ophelia felt tears threatening again. "No one has ever done anything like this for me." "They should have." Logan helped her into the cart, his strong hand steadying her. "Now, I thought we might take a ride out to the creek north of town. It is a pretty spot and we can have a picnic if you would like." "That sounds wonderful." They set off, Logan walking alongside the mule and cart, occasionally glancing back to make sure Ophelia was comfortable. The day was warm but not unbearably hot, and the landscape rolled out around them in gentle waves of grass and scattered wildflowers. As they traveled, Ophelia could not help but notice the looks from people they passed. Mrs. Patterson stared open-mouthed from her garden. Mr. Henderson actually stopped his wagon to watch them go by. She knew the gossip would be all over town by evening. "Let them stare," Logan said, as if reading her thoughts. "They will get used to it eventually. You are very confident about that. I am confident about us. The rest will fall into place." The creek was indeed beautiful, shaded by cottonwood trees and flowing clear over smooth stones. Logan helped Ophelia down from the cart and spread a blanket in the shade. They ate the lunch she had packed, simple but good, and talked about everything and nothing. "Tell me more about the mountains," Ophelia said, lying back on the blanket to watch the leaves flutter overhead. "What is it like up there?" Logan stretched out beside her, propped on one elbow. "It is wild and free. The air smells like pine and snow, even in summer. You can see for miles from the high peaks, just endless forest and sky. At night, the stars are so bright and so many you feel like you could reach up and touch them. It sounds incredible. It is. But it can be harsh too. Winters are brutal and you have to know what you are doing to survive. It is not an easy life. Would you want to go back there?" "To live, I mean." He was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about that. Part of me will always love the mountains, but I am starting to realize that a place is just a place without the right person to share it with." "So what will you do?" "I have some money saved from years of trapping. Enough to buy land, maybe start a small ranch. I was thinking somewhere between here and the mountains, a place where I could still trap seasonally but also build something more permanent." "A ranch? Do you know anything about ranching?" Logan laughed. "Enough. I have worked cattle before and I know horses. It would not be anything big at first, just a few head of cattle, maybe some horses. But it would be mine, ours, if you would want that." Ophelia turned to look at him. You are talking about a future together. I am. Too soon. Maybe. Probably. But I find that I want to hear about it anyway. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. I want to build you a house with wide doorways and smooth floors, no stairs to struggle with. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to take care of you, not because you need taking care of, but because it would be my honor and privilege. Logan. Her voice caught. I know I am not refined or educated. I spend half my life covered in dirt and animal blood. But I would work every day to make you happy, Ophelia. I would never make you feel less than the remarkable woman you are. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough beard beneath her palm. You make me feel things I never thought I would feel. You make me believe in possibilities I had given up on. Then believe in this. Believe in us. He leaned down and kissed her, gentle and sweet. Ophelia felt warmth spread through her entire body, chasing away years of loneliness and doubt. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. It terrifies me, but I think I am. Logan grinned, that transformative smile that made him look years younger. Good, being scared means it matters. They spent the rest of the afternoon by the creek, talking and dreaming. Logan told her his plans in more detail, how he had been scouting land to the west of Dalhart, where there was good grazing and water. Ophelia described the kind of garden she would want, flowers as well as vegetables, a riot of color to brighten the harsh landscape. As the sun began to lower, Logan helped her back into the cart for the ride home. When they reached her house, he lifted her down and carried her up the steps, setting her gently on her feet at the door. Thank you for today, she said. It was perfect. First of many, I hope. He kissed her forehead. Get some rest. I will come by tomorrow if that is all right. It is more than all right. After he left, Ophelia sat in her chair by the window, watching the sunset and feeling like her whole life had changed in just a few days. She knew there would be challenges ahead. The town would not easily accept their relationship, and building a life together would require work and sacrifice from both of them. But for the first time, she felt ready to face those challenges. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Logan extended his stay in Dalhart indefinitely, taking odd jobs around town to earn money while he courted Ophelia properly. He took her on picnics, helped her with chores, and slowly won over some of the more skeptical townspeople with his quiet competence and obvious devotion. Not everyone was pleased. Mrs. Patterson made several pointed comments about propriety and the unseemly haste of their relationship. Some of the younger men in town seemed almost offended that this outsider had come in and swept Ophelia off her feet, when they had never given her a second glance. But Logan ignored the critics with the same calm indifference he showed to most obstacles. He had eyes only for Ophelia, and his steadfast attention made her bloom like a flower after rain. 1 month to the day after they met, Logan took Ophelia out to the land he had been telling her about. It was a beautiful spot, a valley with a creek running through it and hills rising on either side. Grass grew thick and green, and wildflowers dotted the landscape. This is it, Logan said, helping her down from the cart. This is where I want to build our home, if you will have me. Logan, are you asking? He dropped to one knee in the grass, taking both her hands in his. Ophelia Newfield, I know we have not known each other long, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are brave and strong and beautiful, and I love you with everything I am. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? Ophelia was crying, but they were happy tears this time. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. Logan stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her bad leg. She laughed, holding onto his broad shoulders and feeling truly joyful for the first time she could remember. "We will have a good life here," he promised, setting her down but keeping his arms around her. "I will build you the finest house I can manage, and we will fill it with love and laughter." "I do not need a fine house, I just need you. You will have both." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Dalhart. The ceremony was simple, but Ophelia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years, and she felt beautiful. Logan wore a new suit that he was clearly uncomfortable in, tugging at the collar every few minutes, but his eyes never left her face. When it came time to exit the church as man and wife, Logan did not even hesitate. He swept Ophelia up into his arms and carried her over the threshold and down the steps, carrying her all the way to the wagon that would take them back to her house for the small reception. "You do not have to carry me everywhere," she protested, though she was smiling. "You are my wife. I will carry you whenever and wherever I please." The reception was modest, just a few close friends and some of the more open-minded townspeople. Mrs. Patterson did not attend, but her absence did not dampen Ophelia's spirits. She was married to a man who loved her, who saw past her damaged leg to the woman beneath, and that was more than she had ever dared to dream. That night, in the house that was now theirs together, Logan carried her over the threshold again. "You really are going to carry me over every threshold, are you not?" Ophelia asked, laughing. "Every single one. It is tradition for the wedding, but I am making it our tradition for life." He was true to his word. Over the following months, as they began building their home on the land Logan had purchased, he carried her over every threshold. The threshold of the small cabin they stayed in while the house was being built. The threshold of the barn once it was completed. And finally, on a crisp autumn day, the threshold of their new home. It was a beautiful house, built with care and love. Logan had made sure all the doorways were wide and the floors were smooth hardwood, easy to walk on. There were no stairs except to a small loft, and he had built a special railing along the hallway for Ophelia to use when her leg was particularly troublesome. "Welcome home, Mrs. Foster," he said, setting her down gently in their new front room. Ophelia looked around at the space they had created together, at the furniture they had carefully chosen and the curtains she had sewn. It was not grand or fancy, but it was theirs, and it was filled with love. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect. Far from it, but I am yours." That first winter was hard but happy. Logan trapped when the weather allowed, while Ophelia kept the house and tended to the small tasks that made a home run smoothly. She sewed and mended, cooked and preserved food, and slowly built up her strength. With Logan's help and encouragement, she found she could do more than she had ever thought possible. He built her special tools for the garden, long-handled implements that meant less bending. He fashioned a seat for her in the barn so she could help with milking without standing too long. Every obstacle he found a way around or through, never making her feel incapable but simply adapting their life to work for both of them. In the spring, Ophelia discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified, remembering all the whispers about how a crippled woman could never handle childbearing, could never care for children properly. But Logan held her close and told her she would be a wonderful mother, that their child would be blessed to have her. "What if I cannot do it?" she asked one night, her hand on her still flat stomach. "What if they were right about me being unable to manage?" "They were not right. They were never right." Logan kissed her temple. "You are going to be amazing, and I will be right here beside you every step of the way." The pregnancy was not easy. Ophelia's leg troubled her more as her belly grew, the extra weight making walking even more difficult. But Logan was patient and constant, helping her with everything and never complaining. He carried her when she needed it, supported her when she could walk, and rubbed her aching leg every night. Their son was born on a warm day in October, a healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and a strong set of lungs. Logan cried when he held his son for the first time, this huge mountain man reduced to tears of joy. "He is perfect," Logan said, staring down at the tiny face. "You did so well, Ophelia. I am so proud of you." They named him Henry after Ophelia's father, and he was the light of their lives. Logan proved to be a devoted father, getting up for midnight feedings and changing diapers without complaint. He built a special cradle that rocked smoothly and could be positioned next to Ophelia's chair, so she could tend to Henry without having to stand for long periods. As Henry grew, Ophelia found that her fears had been groundless. Yes, there were challenges, but there always were with children. Her legs sometimes made it difficult to chase after a toddling Henry, but Logan was always there to help, and she learned to work around her limitations. 2 years later, they had a daughter, Rose, who had Ophelia's dark hair and sweet temperament. Then 2 years after that, another son they named Thomas. Their house filled with noise and laughter, with the chaos and joy of family life. Logan expanded the ranch slowly but steadily. He kept trapping in the winter, but only for a few weeks at a time, never wanting to be away from his family for long. The cattle herd grew, and he bought several good horses. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable and happy. Ophelia started taking in sewing work from nearby ranches, her skilled hands creating beautiful garments and quilts. She found satisfaction in the work and pride in contributing to the family income. Logan always praised her skill, telling anyone who would listen that his wife was the finest seamstress in 3 counties. The children grew up knowing their mother was different but never thinking of her as less. Henry, as the oldest, became protective of Ophelia, always ready to fetch things for her or help in small ways. Rose was gentle and patient, content to sit with her mother and learn sewing. Thomas was wild and energetic, but even he understood that Mama needed help sometimes. One day, when Henry was about 8 years old, he came home from town upset. Logan was out working cattle, so Ophelia sat her son down to find out what was wrong. "Jeremy Patterson said that you were crippled," Henry finally admitted, tears in his eyes. "He said it was sad that we had a mother who could not walk right." Ophelia's heart ached, but she kept her voice calm. "What did you say to him?" "I said he was wrong. I said you could do anything, but he just laughed and said everyone knew you were damaged." She pulled Henry close. "Listen to me, sweetheart. Yes, my leg does not work the way most people's legs do. I was hurt when I was young and it never healed quite right. That is true. But that does not make me damaged or less than anyone else. It just means I have to do some things differently. But it is not fair that people say mean things about you. No, it is not fair. People can be cruel about things they do not understand. But you know what? Their opinion does not matter. What matters is how we treat each other, how we love each other. Your father loves me exactly as I am. You and your sister and brother love me. That is what counts." Henry was quiet for a moment. "Papa says you are the strongest person he knows." "Does he?" "He says that you face every day with courage, that you never give up even when things are hard. He says that is real strength." Ophelia felt tears prick her eyes. "Your father is a very wise man." When Logan came home that evening, she told him about the incident. His jaw tightened, and the next day he made a point of stopping by the Patterson ranch. Ophelia never knew exactly what was said, but Jeremy never made another comment about her, and Mrs. Patterson was notably cooler to them in town after that. The years rolled by, marked by birthdays and holidays, by hard winters and bountiful harvests. The ranch prospered, and their children grew strong and healthy. Logan kept his promise, carrying Ophelia over thresholds whenever the opportunity presented itself. Sometimes it was practical, when her leg was particularly bad. Sometimes it was playful, sweeping her up just to make her laugh. But always, it was a reminder of his love and devotion. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan took Ophelia back to the creek where he had first proposed. The children were staying with a neighboring family for the night, giving them rare time alone. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here?" Logan asked, holding her hand as they sat on a blanket. "Of course. You told me about your dreams for the ranch, for our life together. Did I live up to those dreams?" Ophelia turned to look at him, this man who had changed her entire life. His hair was streaked with gray now, and his face bore more lines, but his eyes were the same brilliant blue, still filled with love when he looked at her. "You exceeded them. Logan, you gave me a life I never thought possible. You made me feel beautiful and capable and loved. You gave me children and a home and a place where I belong. How could I ask for more?" "I am the one who got the better end of this deal," Logan said, pulling her close. "You gave me everything I did not even know I needed. A home, a family, a reason to come down from those mountains and become a better man. You were already a good man. Maybe, but you made me want to be better." They kissed as the sun set, just as they had so many times before. After all these years, the spark was still there, the connection that had drawn them together from the very first. As they prepared to leave, Logan lifted Ophelia into his arms to carry her back to the wagon. "I can walk, you know," she said, laughing. "I know. But why should you when you have me? You are never going to stop carrying me, are you? Not until my last breath. I told you, Ophelia. Over every threshold for the rest of our lives." And he meant it. Even as they both grew older, even as Logan's back sometimes protested, and Ophelia insisted she was too heavy now, he still carried her whenever he could. The children grew up seeing this constant display of love and devotion, learning that true love meant choosing each other every single day. Henry married a local girl named Sarah and started his own ranch nearby. Rose fell in love with a schoolteacher who had moved to Dalhart, a kind man who treated her with respect and affection. Thomas, restless and adventurous like his father, joined a cattle drive north, but always came home between jobs. Ophelia and Logan became grandparents, doting on their grandchildren with the same devotion they had shown their own children. Logan built toys and told stories, while Ophelia sewed clothes and taught the girls to stitch. Their house remained a center of love and laughter, a place where everyone felt welcome. One day, when Ophelia was in her 50s, she and Logan were sitting on their porch watching the sunset. Her leg had grown worse over the years, and she rarely walked anywhere now without considerable pain. But Logan had built her a wheeled chair that made moving around easier, and she had learned to accept help with more grace than she once had. "You ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Tying yourself to a woman who could not even walk properly?" Logan turned to stare at her. "After all these years, you still ask me that. Sometimes I wonder. You could have had anyone, Logan. A woman who could ride beside you, who could keep up with your long strides, who would not need constant accommodation. Ophelia Foster, you listen to me." He took her hand, his grip still strong after all these years. "You are the only woman I have ever wanted. Your leg has nothing to do with who you are. You have been my partner in every way that matters. You run our home, raise our children, build this life with me. You are not less than anyone else. You have never been less. And if I had to go back and choose all over again, I would choose you 1,000 times over. Even though you have had to carry me over all those thresholds," he smiled. "Especially because of that. Every time I carried you, it reminded me of the vows we made. to support each other, to lift each other up, to be there through everything. Those thresholds were not just doorways, Ophelia. They were moments where I got to show you, every single time, that I meant what I said when I promised to love you forever. Tears streamed down Ophelia's face. I love you so much. I love you too. Always have, always will. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, they sat together in the peace of decades of shared life. 3 children, 5 grandchildren so far, and a ranch that had grown from a dream into a thriving reality. All because a mountain man had seen past her damaged leg to the strong woman beneath, and had refused to let her believe she was unworthy of love. That night, Logan carried Ophelia over the threshold of their bedroom one more time. She laughed as she always did, protesting as she always did, and he ignored her protests as he always did. "You are impossible," she said as he set her gently on the bed. "I am devoted. There is a difference." Years continued to pass. Logan's joints grew stiff from decades of hard work, but he remained strong and vital. Ophelia's hair turned silver, but her eyes still sparkled with the same intelligence and humor that had captivated Logan from the start. They celebrated their 20th anniversary, then their 25th. The ranch was now run primarily by Henry, with Thomas helping when he was in town. Logan still worked every day, but he had slowed down, taking on more supervisory roles and letting the younger men handle the heavy labor. Ophelia's sewing business had grown over the years, and she now had several women in town who worked under her direction. Despite her limited mobility, she had built a successful enterprise that provided income for multiple families. She was proud of what she had accomplished, proof that her leg had never been the limitation everyone once thought. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a party. Friends and neighbors came from miles around, filling their house and yard with celebration. Even some of the people who had once looked down on Ophelia came, acknowledging the remarkable life she and Logan had built together. Mrs. Patterson, now quite elderly herself, approached Ophelia during the party. "I owe you an apology," the old woman said stiffly. "I was wrong about you, about what you could achieve. You proved us all wrong." Ophelia smiled graciously. "I did not do it to prove anything to anyone. I did it because Logan believed in me, and that gave me the courage to believe in myself. He is a good man. You chose well." "He chose me first. That made all the difference." As the party wound down, Logan found Ophelia sitting in her chair, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever imagined possible. You, completely." He crouched down beside her chair. "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About how blessed I have been. I came to Dalhart 30 years ago planning to stay a few days and move on. Instead, I found you and you changed everything. You gave me a reason to stay, a reason to build something lasting. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. You gave me the same gift, Logan. You saw me when no one else did. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You carried me over every threshold, literally and figuratively. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat." That night, after all the guests had left and the children had gone home, Logan carried Ophelia to bed one more time. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, and thought about how much had changed since that day he had caught her from falling in the dusty street of Dalhart. They had built a beautiful life together, full of love and laughter and hard-won triumphs. Her leg had never magically healed, and there had been days when the pain and limitation had frustrated her. But Logan had been there through it all, never wavering, never treating her as less than whole. Their children had grown up secure in their parents' love, had learned that true strength came in many forms, and that physical limitations did not define a person's worth. Now they were passing those lessons on to their own children, creating a legacy that would extend far beyond Logan and Ophelia's own lives. As she drifted off to sleep that night, safe in her husband's arms, Ophelia thought about the girl she had been 30 years ago. Lonely, resigned to spinsterhood, convinced that her damaged leg made her unmarriageable. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that she was wrong, that the most amazing man would soon walk into her life and change everything. But that girl would not have believed it. She had needed to live it, to experience the reality of Logan's unwavering love and support. She had needed to learn, slowly and surely, that she was worthy of everything she had always wanted. The years continued their steady march. Logan and Ophelia grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. Logan's hair went completely white, and his face became deeply lined from a lifetime spent outdoors. Ophelia's hands grew gnarled with arthritis, making her beloved sewing more difficult, though she refused to give it up entirely. They slowed down but never stopped. Logan still carried Ophelia over thresholds, though now they both laughed at the effort it took. Their children and grandchildren would watch with a mixture of amusement and tender affection, seeing the devotion that had never dimmed despite the passing decades. On a warm spring day, Logan and Ophelia sat on their porch watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard. Henry's daughter had married and had 2 children of her own, and Rose's sons were starting families too. The legacy they had built was growing and spreading, a testament to the love that had started it all. 5 generations, Ophelia mused. Can you believe it? I can barely keep track of all their names, Logan admitted with a grin. But it is good to see. We made something that will last long after we are gone. The ranch, the family, the love, the proof that 2 people who were not supposed to fit together can build something beautiful. Ophelia reached over and took his hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of decades of practice. We did do that, did we not? We did. And I am proud of every minute of it. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of glory, Logan helped Ophelia up from her chair. Her legs barely supported her weight now, the damage from her childhood injury compounded by decades of wear. Let me, he said, and swept her into his arms. Logan, your back is fine, and even if it was not, I would still do this. He carried her inside, over the threshold of their home as he had done countless times before. You are my wife, Ophelia. I will carry you as long as I have breath in my body. He carried her to their bedroom and helped her settle into bed. Then he lay down beside her, pulling her close as he had done for more than 30 years. Thank you, Ophelia whispered, for everything. For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a life beyond anything I dreamed possible. You do not have to thank me for loving you. It is the easiest thing I have ever done. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, 2 people who had defied the odds and the expectations to build something remarkable. Logan and Ophelia lived several more years, their health slowly declining but their love remaining constant. When Logan's knees finally gave out and he could no longer carry Ophelia, she held his face in her hands and told him it did not matter, that he had carried her enough for 10 lifetimes. But even then, confined to bed in his final days, Logan insisted on supporting her. When she sat beside him, he would hold her hand and tell her she was beautiful. He would share memories of their life together, each threshold he had carried her over, each moment of joy and struggle they had shared. No regrets, he said one afternoon, his voice weak but his eyes still bright. Not a single one. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Ophelia Foster. And you were mine. You saved me, Logan, in every way a person can be saved. We saved each other. He died peacefully 2 days later with Ophelia holding his hand and their children gathered around. The whole county came to his funeral, honoring a man who had been respected for his integrity, his hard work, and his absolute devotion to his family. Ophelia lived another 3 years without him. It was the hardest time of her life, losing the man who had been her partner and champion for so long. But she was surrounded by the family they had built together, by the love they had nurtured and grown. Her children and grandchildren cared for her with the same devotion Logan had shown, and she spent her final years sharing stories of their life together. She told them about the day she had nearly collapsed in the heat and Logan had caught her, about how he had fixed her porch and asked to court her, about the land where he had proposed and the house he had built with doorways wide enough for her to navigate easily, about every threshold he had carried her over, proving his love with actions as much as words. "Your grandfather was the best man I ever knew," she told her grandchildren. "He taught me that limitations are often just in our minds, that love sees past physical imperfections to the soul beneath. He showed me that I was worthy of everything I had been told I could never have." On a quiet autumn evening, Ophelia passed away in her sleep, in the house Logan had built for her, surrounded by family. They buried her beside Logan on the hill overlooking the ranch, and at her funeral, her children shared stories of their parents' remarkable love. "Papa carried Mama over every threshold," Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every single one for their entire married life. It was his way of showing her every day that he chose her, that he loved her, that her damaged leg meant nothing compared to everything she was. They taught us what real love looks like, and that legacy will live on through all of us." The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations. The story of Logan and Ophelia became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The mountain man who had come to town for a few days and stayed for a lifetime. The woman everyone said was unmarriageable who built an extraordinary life. Their great-great-grandchildren would visit the homestead and see the wide doorways Logan had built, the smooth floors he had laid. They would hear about every threshold he had carried her over, about the love that had refused to be limited by physical imperfection or social prejudice. In the town of Dalhart, Texas, where it all began, people still told the story decades later. About the mountain man and the woman with the bad leg, about how he had defied everyone's expectations and married her anyway. About how they had built something beautiful together, a love that transcended the narrow-minded prejudices of their time. The house still stood on the land Logan had chosen, maintained by the family as a reminder of where they came from. The wide doorways remained, testament to a man who had built his home around his wife's needs. The smooth floors still gleamed, laid by hands that had loved. And in the family Bible, preserved carefully through the generations, was an inscription in Logan's rough handwriting. "I carried her over every threshold because she carried me through every day. She was never broken, never less. She was everything." It was the legacy of a mountain man who had seen what others missed, who had loved without reservation or condition, and of a woman who had learned to believe she deserved that love, who had built a remarkable life, despite everyone's predictions. Their love story became more than just family legend. It became a testament to what was possible when two people truly saw each other, when love looked past surface imperfections to the strength beneath. In a harsh land during a hard time, they had created something soft and beautiful, a refuge of love that had sheltered not just them but generations that followed. The thresholds Logan had carried Ophelia over were long gone, worn away by time and weather. But the love that had prompted those actions remained, embedded in the foundation of the family they had built. in the values they had passed down, in the proof that two people who were never supposed to fit together could create something that would last forever. In the end, it was not about her leg or his strength. It was about choice, about seeing someone fully and loving them anyway, about building a life together one threshold at a time. Logan had chosen Ophelia every single day, and she had chosen him right back. And from those daily choices came a love story that would echo through time. The mountain man and the woman they said was unmarriageable had proved everyone wrong. They had shown that love was not about perfection, but about acceptance. Not about overcoming limitations, but about building around them. Not about one person saving another, but about two people choosing each other every single day. And somewhere in the wide Texas sky, perhaps their spirits still danced together, Logan still carrying Ophelia over thresholds only they could see. Their love as strong in death as it had been in life, eternal and unbreakable and true.